There we go. Good. Hello, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Yes, we are today going to try to complete the Likuti Torah that we began. Likuti Torah. Now, what's this Likuti Torah talking about? It's talking about, and basically the same topic that we learn in the Dvar Malchut, namely the difference between the spies that Moses sent and the spies that Joshua sent 40 years later. And especially here we're concentrating more on the spies that Joshua sent. And just to refresh everybody's memory, Moses, before the Jews entered the land of Israel, so he sent out 12 scouts, Meraglim. They're called spies, I guess. Anyway, so he sent them out to survey the land of Israel and to come back with a positive report. And it ended up that they came back with a negative report. We talked about that before. And all the Jewish people said, we're not going into the land of Israel. We understood what they said, and we get the point. We're not fools. We're not leaving the desert. We're staying in the land of Israel. God got very angry. And they had to wander around in the desert for 40 years, 1 year for each day that they were in the land of Israel. Instead of using those days, those 40 days positively, they used them negatively. So God said, okay, I'm going to transform each one of those days into a punishment. And so they wandered for 40 years. Good. Now they're about to go into the land of Israel. Finally, the whole previous generation of sinners that refused to enter the land of Israel, they all died. And now we have a new generation. And Joshua does the same thing. He sends spies. But he doesn't send 12. He sends 2. And he doesn't send them in an advertised way. He sends them quietly. And they don't survey the whole land of Israel. They stay there for a very short amount of time, maybe one night or whatever. And then they had to run away. They hid in the mountains for 3 days, it says, and then they only saw just the outskirts of the land of Israel, and they didn't even see that. They just were in the house of one lady. But that was enough. They heard the news that everyone in Canaan is afraid, and that they're all shaking in their boots, and they knew that they were going to win. So, okay, so what does this idea mean to us? What do we care? What do we care? So the Rebbe says basically that this world, what's the purpose of the Jews going into Israel at all? The purpose of the Jews going into Israel is to reveal the true soul of everything in the world. Everything in the world has a soul. Every brick, every flower, everything in the world has a soul. And the soul is the purpose of that thing. And it's like a person, God forbid, dies, so you bury the person. The same thing, let's say you have a table, you have a chair. So it has a purpose. The purpose of a table is to, put things on it. A chair is to sit on. When that chair, you can't use it. When the use is gone, so that thing is dead, you throw it away. Maybe you can use it for firewood or something else. But the use of the thing, so everything in the world has a purpose to it. The purpose of everything in the world is the soul. It's called a spark sometimes. And the tzutz, a spark. And the purpose of the Jews is to reveal this in the world. And they begin from the land of Israel. So they're supposed to go to the land of Israel. And they have to do it through the Torah and the commandments. That's the unique thing about the Jews. They have this thing called Torah and commandments. And the Torah, and especially the commandments. So it says that every time a Jew does a commandment, it evokes a certain smell from God. Smell. What type of smell? Why don't we smell it? It says because there's smell that revives the soul. Sharp souls revive the soul. And somehow or other, smell goes into your nose. A smell reaches the innermost parts of your being. A person that's unconscious, he smells, he becomes conscious again. Says this comes from an aspect of God which is called God's erech apayim, long, or patience, if you want to call it, but it means long faces or long nose. Apayim is also the nose. So it says Erech Habayim. This comes from God. And if you notice, the nose is in the middle of the face, right? It's right in the middle. So it shows it's balanced right in the middle. It goes to the somehow or other. The power of smell is the deepest of powers, the least appreciated, but also the deepest of powers. It says the Mashiach is going to judge everything by his smell. So we're not talking about a physical smell. We're talking about some sort of spiritual smell, and that's aroused every time that a Jew does a mitzvah. It sort of wakes up the world a little bit, wakes up the soul. Okay, let's see. Where do we get up to here? Okay, so that's the idea of JERICO. JERICO, the word reach means smell. And that's where the spies that Joshua sent in, they went only up to JERICO, JERICO. They went up only to JERICO, JERICO, because that's the main thing. That's and they want to call it the soul, awakening the soul of the Jewish, of the world. Of the world. And that's the whole idea of going into the land of Israel, is to wake up the world. But JERICO is sort of like the nose of all of Israel. And that was the main thing. So it says, okay, let's do this. Even we did it yesterday. Let's see how much we can get. Okay, here we go. This, when the Jewish people, when a Jew does a commandment, so it draws down this revelation of God into the world. A very thin revelation of God, but it reaches God's essence, because the commandments come from God's essence. The commandment, who would believe that this is really what God wants, right? God wants Jews to put on boxes on their arms. But in fact, the Jews, down deep, every Jew believes this. They know it's true. It makes no sense. And the reason we do the commandments is just because God commanded. What type of a reward do we get? We evoke a smell that we don't smell. We have no idea what we're talking about. But somehow or other, this smell is like the smelling salts, whatever, it awakens comes from the essence of God. That's what it says. They smelled him with the smell of God. It's talking about Moshiach, the smell of God. V'hu l'mashal kamo sha'areach. Oh, let me make this bigger. I forgot that I can make it bigger. Here, 1 second, 1 minute, 1 minute, bigger. This is like a mashal. This is like an example. For example, it's a metaphor for like smell. Smell is not the essence of a thing, but it's just like a fragrance that comes from a thing, right? You have the perfume. When you smell it, you're not taking the perfume and drinking it or eating it, putting it in. It's just a little bit of an evaporation. This also, that's what happens when we do a commandment. It's drawn down from Or Ein Sof. It's just like a wisp of infinite godliness comes into the world, and that's called Erech Habayim. It's called Anpin. It's called the long faces or long nosed. Like it says, Arich Api. It says, I will lengthen my nose. This is one of the reasons why anger is also called Af. Af. And the word for nose is also Af. Af. Why? Because you see, when a person gets angry, he breathes hard, right? He's breathing hard, right? It comes out through his nose. It says Tehilati achatem loch. Chotem is another word for nose. Like it says Be'idra, like it's written in this book, a few chapters, whatever, in the Zohar, one chapter in the Zohar. It's called the Idra Rabbah, Idra Zuta, the Idra of Parshas Nosai. I think that's the Idra Rabbah. I think that's what's called the big room and the small room that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai spoke right before he passed away. It says, Labala chotem ani mitpalel. I pray to the master of the nose. Because the master of the nose, we're talking about the God's nose, that's mercy. That reaches the essence of God. Labala chotem ani mitchanen. To the master of the nose, I supplicate, I beg. Sha'orazu, that this ray of smell is called nose, God's nose. V'hu b'chinas reach. This is what's called the smell. And God, and God, Nikra Balachotem, he's called the master, the owner of the nose. It's the nose of God. Shu Atzmius Umakar Ha'ora, he's the source of this ray of godliness, of God's mercy, so to speak, which comes from God's essence, and it comes from it. And this ray of godliness, which is called God's smell, if you want to call it, the God's fragrance. It says that when Jacob came in to receive the blessing from his father, his blind father, Yitzchak, so Jacob's mother dressed him up like in furs and things like that, made all sorts of tricks that his father would think it was Esav. Esav. So he said, when he came in, he said, the smell of your garments is like the smell of the garden of God. And he sensed that Jacob, with this smell, he sensed that Jacob had this new smell, or he thought that maybe Esav repented. And this smell of godliness, fragrance of godliness, which comes into the world, this is a rucha me'eretz mida. It's infinitely greater than any measurement, spiritual or physical, that could be made. Like we said, smell awakens a person. And in this case, the person is God, the creator of the universe. So all the spiritual levels, those are just creations. And this smell, which comes from the commandments that we do, this spreads out from a very, very high place. That's named the Ein Sof Baruch Hu, the essence of God. Shu believable that is infinite. Bebechinas mata mata, and it brings it to the lowest of lows. Me'od makom hagavul, places where there's limits, and there's to this lowest limited world. Simply speaking, it brings the highest aspect of God into the lowest sinners. God's mercy. Look, and therefore, Nikra Erechapayim, therefore it's called long faces or long nose. Arichat Ampin, that's called a long face, a long nose on apim. That it brings down this smell of godliness, this pure fragrance of life from the essence of godliness to lahalbish, to wrap the soul in in thought, speech, and action of the commandments of the Torah. And remember, that's what we said, that the whole purpose that God created the world in these three levels, general three levels. It says there's also three worlds, which are called Bria, Yetzirah, and Asiya. Bria is like God's thought, and Yetzirah is God's speech, and Asiya is God's deed. And also in this physical world, every human being expresses himself with thought, speech, and action. Those are the garments of a person. And we can draw down holy garments to our soul, thought, speech, and action. It says these holy garments come from the smell of God. Like I said, the smell of the garments of Jacob. And these garments, they're drawn down by the days. Remember, we learned this yesterday. This is the 365 days of the year. And each day has its opportunities to do commandments and to do good things. Now, when we do a good deed or a commandment, it seems like it takes a couple minutes. But the fact is that it's above time. We're doing something in time, but what it's really touching at is above time. It's the Creator himself. This is the will of the Creator. When we do a commandment, we say, God, you made us holy with your commandments, and you commanded us to, and then you do the commandment, you become holy. That holiness is like this idea of the smell. Something like the incense that was in the holy temple, or the sacrifices. It says that it was a good smell to God. Reach nichoach. It was a good, pleasant smell to God, the sacrifices. And the devil, Kamola Mashal, for instance, the 365 blood vessels, that the blood flows through them from the heart to all of the limbs, and it's drawn through these very narrow channels called blood vessels. That they are what's called gavuros. These are very strict. A person, that's like the commandments. The commandments are very strict channels to draw godliness into the world. The commandments have to be exact. And also a person has to, in order to do the commandments, also has to arouse in himself a power. He has to defy his sometimes you have to defy your nature, your urges. You have to overpower your selfishness in these three ways: thought, speech, and action. You have to think the way God wants and speak the way God wants and act the way God wants. Or conversely, you have to not think the way God forbids and refrain from speaking the way God prohibits and stop yourself from acting the way God doesn't want you to act. Right? So you have to force yourself to do good and to go from bad. That's the commandments. That brings God into the world, into thought, speech, and action. We have no idea how important we are. So, okay, this is the general principle. A person should take to his thought. Let's make a summary over here. What are we supposed to do? Think. Start thinking, but think deeply. Think in a way you think about something that's important. To think deeply. 1 minute. Let's turn the page here. What are we supposed to think about? That with one holy thought, right? You think a word of Torah. You draw upon yourself from above a garment for the soul, which this garment, this comes from this aspect of God's fragrance. And when you're doing a commandment, you shouldn't be thinking about what you're going to receive. In order to receive reward, but that by means of this, you will be included, you will be enveloped in God's oneness. It'll be a garment for you, something above your understanding. So one thing about garments is that you don't eat them. They don't go inside. They're on you, but they're on you. It's not like your house. 1,000 people can go into one house at a time, but your garment, only one person could fit, but it still doesn't go inside. The commandments are a garment. They're yours, individual, but you can't understand them. It's above understanding. That's like the idea of smell. It's above understanding, but awakens the essence of the soul. A person that's fainted, and this, a person should always think and should always desire. So that you should not be separated from God's oneness. That's what you should think about. Here's another thing to think about. A person should contemplate also. What's on the opposite? Think, number one, about how good it is and how wonderful it is, and the wonderful effect and repercussions of doing a commandment. It draws godliness, pure godliness in the world in a way we can't understand. That's this God's smell. But let's think about also the opposite. The Hainu, Machshava Rose, a person thinks bad thoughts, Shem Lavushim Tamain, that these are impure garments for your soul. And not like the mistake that the fools make. Shakal Beineam, that it's very, how do you say, not important in their eyes. Lachshov machshavas chutz, to think whatever they want. Because it's not coming to deed, right? I'm just thinking about robbing the bank. I'm not robbing the bank. I'm just thinking about what's wrong with thinking. It says, don't say that. Don't think that. Your thoughts are your thoughts. They're your garments of your soul. They're very important. A good thought has a tremendous effect on the world. It draws this level of godliness. A bad thought does the opposite. And also to say what the rabbis say, that a bad thought that a Jew has, God does not join it to a deed. Right? He wanted to rob the bank, but all of a sudden he broke his toe and he couldn't go. So God does not consider that he did a sin. How much more so, Hirhurim rhyme. If a person thoughts just pass through your mind, or stupid thoughts, you don't even call them bad thoughts, right? People listen to the news, they listen to whatever. Really, the fact of the matter is, says the Rebbe, we don't know how important we are. A machshava ba'atzmo, a thought itself, is a garment, and it becomes an impure garment that you put and surrounds the soul from the head to the foot. And it can't be united in God's oneness. Therefore, it should be in his eyes a one thought, like you're worshiping idols. Okay, now it's not supposed to make you feel bad. Wow, I was just sitting and thinking about, what I would do if I was the prime minister of Israel. I would do like this. Stupid thoughts. What are you thinking that for? There's no purpose whatsoever, right? No purpose whatsoever. If you want to think about if I was a rich man, right? There's no purpose whatsoever to think those thoughts, unless you're thinking, genuinely you want to run for office or something like that, right? Or the thought comes to your mind, maybe I should run for office, is permissible according to the Torah. But generally speaking, we go through the day and you can't stop thoughts. You can change your thoughts. You can change your thoughts. But thoughts you can't stop. Even those what do they call the meditation they set up? They can't stop your thought. You just think about nothing. You think about whatever they think. You got so if a Jew is not thinking about thoughts that have some connection to Torah commandments, helping your fellow man, improving the world in some way, then those thoughts have no place in him. It's like avodah zarah. It's like strange, and it's like idolatry. It's like going into a job interview, right, and wearing dirty, smelly clothes. Right? And you bring in you bring in your portfolio, and you work for the best people, and the boss says, "Listen, I can't accept you to work. What type of garments?" I says, "No, it's just my undershirt. My undershirt. I dipped it in the toilet before I came here, and I put it on. Why'd you do a thing like that? I don't know. It's not important. It's not important." Says, "What are you talking about? It's not important. Get out of here." The same thing with a person has bad thoughts. It's like not your outer garments. That's speech and action. Your inner garment, just your undershirt. You just dipped it into the what is a cesspool, and then you put it on and went to a meeting or a job interview or a shidduch or something like that. Oh, it's terrible. Says the Rebbe, that's what our bad thoughts are. If a person thinks bad thoughts, so that's what happened. Okay, so what are we supposed to do if we do the very general principle in Judaism? If you have bad thoughts, and if you're supposed to feel very, very, very bitter, tremendously bitter, for about 5 seconds, and that's it. And then say, I'm going to try not to do this anymore. I'll remove my mind. I'll do something. And if you don't stop, you should feel very bitter for another couple of seconds. And then you say, listen, the only way to get out of this, I have to think of something positive, something good. Something positive, something good, something happy. That's why it says that depression, it brings to all sins. Because when you have bad thoughts, you have no antidote. They just go in, you have no positive thing to think about because you can't stop thinking. So it says, but when you realize you're thinking all the time these bad thoughts or meaningless, stupid thoughts, right? You should feel very bad for a second, 10 to 5 seconds. And then after you realize the only way you can get rid of them is you have to think of something positive and good. And then you have to find something positive and good. Look, and therefore, bad thoughts should be like idolatry. Even more, mamish, and very, very severe sins that with bad thoughts or negative thoughts or even neutral thoughts that have no meaning to them, you're separated from God's oneness. Let's say you're thinking about thoughts about your business. Let's say you happen to be a nuclear scientist and you have to think all day long about different formulas. Okay, but you're doing a job. It's permissible to work in the world. It's permissible. And not only that, it's a commandment. It's 6 days of the 10 commandments. 6 days you should work. So things that are relevant to your job, positive things. But if, let's say, in your middle of your work, all of a sudden you think, right, my boss is just such an evil person. Oh, that's not a positive thought. That's not a. So it's very, of course, it's very, very delicate and very this. But the Rebbe wants to say that our thoughts have very bad repercussions, bad thoughts. On the other hand, you can get rid of all the bad repercussions by just doing one good thing. A little bit of light pushes away a lot of darkness. And especially when you think about how many bad thoughts you had since you were born. I'm sorry, in every day, I'm sorry, that these thoughts are these garments. That's what it means. Yomim Yotzoro, that God made days V'lo echad behem, and not one in them. It's in Psalm 139. Sometimes, some say that the word lo is written with a vav. Lo, vav means to him, and lo means not. So it says, days were made, and not one of them. Not one in them. What does it mean? She'omro Adam Rishon, the first man, Adam, after he ate from the tree, Galmi ru'einecha, my body saw your eyes. What does it mean? She're'iti et atzmi, that suddenly Adam saw himself naked. He didn't have any garments. The garments we said are the commandments. As soon as he ate from that tree, as he removed positive garments that he had, Kamo Golem, just like a naked body, like what do you say? The Golem. What's the Golem? Like a robot. A Golem is also like like clay. Unformed clay is called a golem. It has no shape to it. It's naked. That's what it means. Yom Yotzaru, that God made days. God made days. What does it mean? That God, you gave me days. Adam said, and also King David said, you gave me days to clothe my soul in them, to draw down by means of these days my time, my life, to draw down this level of one. Lo echad behem, but I didn't draw down this oneness of God. Ani hu shalom shachti, but I did not draw down this oneness of God in them. That's what it says. Adam Arishon, man said, Yomim tzaro, God, you gave me days. Adam said, V'lo echad, but I did not draw down God's oneness into them. He sinned. So it says, look over here once again, the different places when I want to go past these parentheses. Like I say, some people say it's low, that to him there is one in them. And one of the explanations is that's Yom Kippur. That's the one day for God. Okay. 1 second. Where does this go up to? 1 minute. 1 minute. That's what reads the attachment room. Okay. 1 minute. Here we go. Excuse me, I'm just trying to find. These are the spies that Joshua sent. Joshua sent, and he told them to spy out just Jericho, JERICO, the smell. Hainu bechinas fragrance, this smell, this fragrance we talked about before, l'ragel, to spy out and to discern the garments that we can make from the land of Israel, doing the commandments. Shemi bechinas reach, that's the smell, bechinas meraglin, these spies that Moses sent to spy out the land, to survey the land of Canaan. And this was in order to discern love and fear. And this cannot be done except by means of Moses. Moses, he was the highest level of Judaism you can reach. He was like the sun in the sky, Chama. Shehu michachma, that he was from this level of God's wisdom, God's essence, life force. That was Moses. Like it says, the face of Moses was like the face of the sun, S-U-N. The Einu Shava L'Kol Nefesh. This is not like any other soul. Therefore, it wasn't a commandment, Al Zeh L'Kol Adam. It says, Ani Ayeh Mitzadecha. Moses said, I'll be the one. God said to Moses, Shlach L'cha. Only you can send these 12 spies. So the 12 spies that Moses sent, that was supposed to be to inspire the Jewish people that would live in the land of Israel to have love and fear, a personal feeling, experience for God, a personal, how do you say, intimate connection to God, with love and with fear, appreciation. And only Moses can do that. That's the idea of what we're learning here, Chassidut, right? Only the Alter Rebbe can really bring us to appreciate and have genuine love and fear of God. There are greater people that also can do it in themselves, but to inspire regular, normal people like us to do it has to be somebody like Moses, someone like the Rebbe. And so therefore, Moses sent in 12 spies, 12 signifying all the different aspects of our personality to link everything to God. Love of God, fear of God, faith in God, which is not the case the spies that Joshua sent in. Those are in the ability of everyone to do. To draw down this level of the smell. Yesh lakol adam, the ragel, every person should survey himself and to think, shalo, not tiyan shmaso aruma, that your soul shouldn't be naked without garments, which we said before, that's the thoughts of the Torah and words and deeds of the Torah and the commandments. 1 minute, 1 minute. Oh, that really is. Okay, all this is just commentary also. 1 second, just give me 1 minute. The Shalom, or maybe we can say that. No, I'm sorry. 1 second, let me. Okay. Good. So let's try this. Here we go. In Barabbas, in the Midrash Rabbah, it's mentioned that Joshua sent over in this Torah, this week's Torah portion. It says, I'm sorry. You have to look. This is Kabbalistic stuff here, and I have to. Okay. Okay. So it says Yom Efshalomam. We can say that it means Yomim Yotzaru. Yoram Yotzaru. This refers to the level of Vayetzer Hashem Elokim et Adam. Yomim Yotzaru, that God formed the days. This corresponds to what it says that God formed man. He formed man. When it says that God formed man, he formed him with 2 yuds. It says 2 yuds. With 2 yuds, what it means in Midrash Rabbah, it says Yetzer Tov and Yetzer Hora. That God made man with a positive impulse and with a selfish impulse. So therefore, we have to say that the negative impulse, Yetzer Hora, this can be subjugated and defeated by the Yetzer Tov, the good impulse. Therefore, it says, Achad Mi'an Yudim, one of the Yuds over here is a little punctuation mark on it. And it's pronounced. And the other one is not pronounced. It says Yetzer Adam, God, it said God, the Yetzer Hashem Elokim et Adam, that God formed man. This is right in the beginning in the book of Bereshit, that God formed man. It says Vayetzer, it doesn't say Vayetzer. One of the yuds is not punctuated to indicate the 2 yuds indicate the 2 yetzers, the 2 powers of imagination, or what do you want? One is the drive to do good, and the other one is the drive to do selfish things, to follow what God says or to follow what I want. One of those yuds is not punctuated to show that it can be secondary to the good impulse. That this indicates this indicates that the reason that God made the bad impulse was that it should be included. In other words, when you pronounce the Yetzer, you only pronounce one letter, that the bad impulse, your bad impulses should be subjugated to the good impulses. And that's also the Ramaz. Ramaz is Rab Moshe Zachut. He wrote an explanation in the Zohar. It says that's Hachna. Hachna. That's also the idea of Eretz Canaan. Hachna'ah. Humility. to subjugate. Hachna'ah means to conquer. This is by means of controlling our thought, speech, and action. Like it says, that's the whole book of the Tanya. And that's what it says, Omar Hema Yotzrim. These are the two impulses, the two urges. That's the Meraglim, that's the spies, and the Shluchim, and the scouts that Moses and Joshua sent out, Lahavchin, in order to discern these garments of thought, speech, and action. Okay, so again, what happened? Moses, also Joshua, they sent into the land of Israel. It wasn't called Israel yet. It was called Eretz Canaan. God promised it to Israel. So to Jacob, it was called Israel. So it's the land of Israel that God promised Israel, but it was called the land of Canaan. When they got there, what did they find? Bad people, destructive people. It says even more that they were the most decadent people in the world. There's a commandment, don't do like the people of Egypt and don't do like the people of Canaan. So they were the most decadent in the world. Why in the world would God do something like that? He put the land of Israel, the Holy Land, and it's the promised land. God promised it to the Jewish people, promised it to Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. That's where Adam was, and he was evicted until Abraham came along 2,000 years later, and he rectified it. He's going to get the land of Israel. So you go in the land of Israel, you figure it's a place that's just the only good over there, and it's, there's all sorts of conducive, do commandments, come and do a commandment over here. There's the tefillin growing on the trees, and only good stuff is there. And they went there, what did they see? That it was one of the most decadent places in the world, and that the people that were there were fierce warriors. They were really frightening. He says, and that's why he sent to understand, to send them in there to determine what is the good of the land of Israel and what's the bad in the land of Israel. And that's what we have to do, each one of us, each Jew first, each human being, but the Jews first. We're Jews. Jews are God's chosen people, but we have all sorts of weird inhabitants inside of us. And that's what's called the evil impulse, Yetzer Hara, or in simple language, selfishness. Everybody wants to do for themselves, and they look at the world like there's only me. And they want to hold on to the land of Israel. They want to hold on to our bodies and control us, right? That's selfishness. That's the name of the game. And there's even people that go, they make big seminars, how to be selfish, right? How to not to think about there's old religions to talk about it. And when it comes right down to it, all the religions are basically that, thinking about yourself, how I'm going to get into heaven, how I'm going to be successful, how I'm going to rule, how I'm going to... Says this selfishness, it conquers our thought, speech, and action. So we have only selfish thoughts, selfish deeds. Those are what the spies were sent in, that Moses sent in, and Joshua sent in to discern, to divide, to spy out, to see what is good and what's bad. And that's what we have to do to ourselves. We have to constantly be evaluating. That's why it's very important that you should have a friend and a teacher and a rabbi, the Lubavitcher Rebbe. If you want, you can ask Igros Kodesh all the time. You can take the letters of the Rebbe and you can ask a question, get an answer, or learn a mimer of the Rebbe, learn a sikh of the Rebbe. Everyone is different. But you have to have people advise you, because God talks through people, gives you advice what to do. It could be making a mistake, you don't know. That's the spies. That's the spies. The spies are to check yourself out. Am I making a mistake? Who's in control, Khan? Who's in control here? Well, the Fish Peshuta, simple meaning is of the Midrash Rabbah that they are the Yotzrim. It means Yotzer Kli Cheres, that they make like the Meraglim Cheresh. It says they were quiet. They were quiet. There's the Pachim Katani. These are the little vessels that Jacob went back for. Jacob, these are the sparks we talked about. The use. What do we use the world for? What do we use our mind for? What do we use our mouth for? What do we use our action? What do we use the world around us for? Those are the sparks of holiness that fell. It says in the breaking of the vessels in the beginning of creation, Olam of Tohu. It says that God wanted there to be evil in the world. He wanted there to be the potential. And so he did this thing called the breaking of the vessels when he created the world. And it's known that by means of the commandments that we elevate these sparks, we elevate these units of use, of purpose that fell from their source. And also that's what it says, Anachtu achomer v'hayat teritzreinu, one of the prayers of Yom Kippur, that we are like the clay, and God, you are the the potter. You create us. So in other words, we have to take the world and reform it. That's what it means. Yetzer, yotzreinu means you are the potter. You're the craftsman. So the word yotzer means the impulse. Yetzer tov, yotzer hara, and yotzer also can mean to reform things. That's what it means, that they are the yotzrim, it says. This comes from a sentence that he brought before. Where is this? He brought this from before. But I'll have to find out what it is. But nevertheless, where do we start off in this one? Second. Okay, he brought from another place. I'll have to look and see what it is. But we've got the point. The point is that Moses and Joshua sent these spies in order to reform the land of Israel, to remake it, Yetzer. And we have to do that with ourselves. So therefore it is necessary to be, he says therefore Joshua sent them in silently. What does it mean, silently? That's like thought. We have to change our thoughts and our direction. Get rid of this, ignore these negative thoughts. Namely, we have to make a reckoning. We have to be accountants and take account of ourselves. We have to think of what thoughts we're thinking about and be careful in the garments of our soul in thought, speech, and action, that they should be only what's called a pleasing smell to God. Now, there's a very important thing in Judaism, and Chabad really brings this out, that God is pleased by our actions. And what does that mean? We have no idea, but it's true. And just like we have no idea what it means that God is creating us, so infinitely more, we have no idea that God is creating us for a purpose, and even more that God reacts when this purpose is fulfilled. And that's what's called the smell of God. God is reach nicho, it's a pleasing smell, a pleasing fragrance to God. And that God reacts by sending down a fragrance to this world. That's the thing of JERICO. That's the thing of JERICO. That's what it says, Ki yomru ha-moshelim ba'u cheshbon. That says that the Moshelim, it's in the, what is it in Parshas, in the Torah, why can't I think of this? Was it in Pinchas, I think? Look over in Pinchas. It says, Bo cheshbon. You have to make an accounting of yourself. Kam cherish, we said cherish means like making a pot, we said, and cherish means to be quiet, and it's talking about thoughts. This is also the idea of cherish. Simple meaning means silent. Shtika. Like it says, malmim alumim. Like it says the dream of Joseph. He said that he dreamed that his brothers were gathering together bundles, but the word alumim also means elam, means to be mute. Mishtukosa de ema kama, and it was drawing down from a tremendously high level of godliness, which is called quietness. It can't be expressed. It says like by Esther, Ein Esther Mageddis. And what Judaism is and what good is cannot And its essence is like smell. You have no idea what it is. You can't understand it. It's silent. But that's the whole idea of going into the land of Israel, sending these silent spies. In other words, to come to this level of the source of this fragrance of God, the source of Judaism. The Lo Matzati too, like that it says in the Ethics of the Fathers, I have not found anything better for the body than silence. Silence. And here what he's talking about is silence means the source of everything, the source of what a Jew is. And now I think that's exactly what's going on in the world. I mean, in a big, we're learning about this Kabbalistic ideas and fixing ourselves up and serving God. But in a big way, that's what's going on in the world. Who really owns the land of Israel? Who owns the land of Israel? And we have like three warring parties over here. Who really owns the land of Israel? And really it belongs to none of them. Really belongs to none of them. Right? We have over here the Hamas. They represent Islam. And we have the Christians, right? They think that they're going to take the thing over with their missionaries and everything like that. And then we have the Zionists. They think that they can make a secular state. But the fact of the matter is all these things are just like bad thoughts. And now the Rebbe is sending out these spies, which is me and you. And we have to start thinking, one second, well, where does Judaism fit into this whole business? What about Judaism? I mean, the land of Israel is a holy land, right? Where is the holiness part? Where's the holiness? All of a sudden, we see there's all these giants that are inhabiting the land, right? Tremendous powers. How powerful the church is, how powerful Islam is, how powerful Zionism is, right? And it's just, conquering the whole entire thing. But what about holiness? That's why Moses and Joshua sent the spies in order to figure out how we can make holiness dominant in the Holy Land. That's the whole thing. So it says the Rebbe, first of all, you have to work on yourself. First of all, it says, like the Rebbe said many times, every Jew has a little Gentile enemy inside. If we conquer the little Gentile enemy inside, then we can conquer the big one outside. So first of all, we have to work on ourselves. When we do that, then we reach a point which is called quietness. The inner, deep, true silence, fragrance of what Judaism is. It's an inner connection with the creator of the universe that's beyond understanding. And even the most non-religious, anti-religious Jew has got it. And he won't deny it. They won't say, I'm not a Jew. Right? If you take one of these big atheist Jews who wants everyone to say, you're not a good Jew, say, I'm just a good Jew as you are. Who are you to tell me was a good? It's something inside that's deep, deep, deep. But that's the essence of what good is. That's what good is. It says, therefore, there's nothing better sometimes than just being quiet. Quiet, reaching this true, the truth of what's going on. And the truth of what's going on is that there's a creator and he's creating everything, and that the Torah is true and the commandments are true. And it's so good that it can't be brought, the essence of it can't be brought into any definition. It's just like pleasant smell. It's like a fragrance that wakes up the essence of the soul. And that's what the spies of Joshua and of Moses and of me and you are doing. And to locate the enemy and find out a lot of times the enemy is me, right? The enemy is ourselves. And to separate the good from the bad and increase the good, and automatically the bad will be dispelled. And even more, the bad will be transformed. Right? It's bad for the world if anyone else except for God, Judaism, Torah, and commandments rules the land of Israel. The land of Israel is holy, and it has to be used in a holy way. And then the whole world will benefit. And that's the idea of these spies, is that we have to constantly examine ourselves, our thoughts, speech, and action, and improve ourselves. And then after that, we can improve the whole entire world. Now let's learn the Dvar Malchut. Dvar Malchut, yes.